We are now recording. John, what is most important?
To what?
Excellent question. Put it in whatever context you would like, and as many contexts as you would like.
Compassion and love, though they overlap. So
That sounds good. Usually I try to find some kind of follow-up question, but that's pretty basic. Second question is, what is your history with religion, and at what point did you decide it was or was not for you?
raised young as a Catholic, and then lapsed, and then Presbyterian and Pentecostal youth groups through junior high, early high school, and then Pentecostal through mid high school. Switched schools, but they weren't that Pentecostal. So there was very little speaking in tongues, maybe a couple times in all those years. So not what you traditionally think of as Pentecostal, probably what you would think of as evangelical, but they were technically Pentecostal. And then sort of just a mainline vanilla small church through the latter half of high school, because I moved, found a church for 2 years there, and then even when I went to college away, it was kind of my home church for the first year there, and then so I've moved around a lot. Found a Church of Christ affiliate. They didn't launch as a Church of Christ, and then they gained affiliation later, and so they're very mainline and very accepting. So you'd have your mohawks and your cutoffs, and didn't matter as long as you showed up. The sermon on dress every year that the pastor liked to give, he goes, "Here's my yearly sermon on how to dress for church. Do it." So he was pretty free about that, as long as you had clothes on. And he also they hosted a lot of rock and roll concerts, and they're very charitable because they have them always for free. So their very strong outreach became mega church fairly early in the days of mega church. They always were music and arts oriented, so they in some ways invented the template for the meta church of always having tons of music and performance, just organically, not by copying the business plans as they do nowadays. And then dabbled all around, so that would still be my core church, but I would go to events and groups at many other denominations.
This is still in high school?
No, this is college. So
Okay.
even Young Earth churches that I didn't know what Young Earth, quit going to as soon as I found out they were Young Earth. And then finding out one of the group that I went to very regularly for years, for one of their college and singles group, finding out they were Young Earth was kind of step zero out of religion. I was still entrenched in wanting to be a minister and had all these drives, but step zero is like, but it didn't affect my walk or my thought or my pursuits. And then much later, we're jumping ahead quite a bit, off and on. Christian, because I wasn't really getting much out of church except the social stuff, because I already kind of knew what they would be talking about and how they would be presenting it. So I would go, get refreshed, but be lapse for a long time. If I had a lot of friends going, I'd go. If I didn't, I didn't. And so we jump ahead like a dozen years, and I'm reading reading church history, because I wanted to integrate a lot of it into a novel I was writing, and I found the festering pus that was in terms of the Christian church. And it's obviously not reflective of Jesus, not reflective of any of my own personal experiences, because even though I was with some of the more extreme churches, they avoided talking about the extreme issues. They just focus on the goodwill, compassion, charity, etc. No fire and brimstone churches among those. And they even went to progressive churches. And but anyway, so that led to questions, and then that's where the steps gathered quickly for leaving. You start looking at the early church, that starts falling apart. You start looking at the Bible, that starts falling apart. And the more I would research and the more I was cementing up this wall, the more holes I saw. The wall wasn't a wall. And this was just some wonderful, fantastic delusion. It was very beautiful and entrancing, but not reflective of anything real. So due to having personal experiences, I still clung on to theism, but not Christianity. And Lee Strobel, thank you, Lee Strobel, you got me out of Christianity with your book, Case for Christ, because it was horrible. So I had read that in beforehand and loved it until I had the questions later and saw that I went, oh yeah, Lee Strobel, he addressed these questions. I remember in the book. And then I went back, it's like, no, he dodged those questions. He avoided those questions. It was horrible. Very unsatisfying. And you go, oh, that's not really a question. And he'd brush it off like, that's the question I actually came with. So you can't. Or he'd give just experts all agree. And like, no, they don't. So full of inaccuracies, lies, and just all kinds of confirmation bias and tactics that focused on confirmation bias. So it's even a step worse. So anybody biased is going to come out of that awesome. Anybody questioning is going to think it's ridiculous. And so that from there, I went to more of a deism. Then I checked out what deism was, capital D, and that was kind of silly. And they were making stuff off too. So small d deism, and then that became, well, if God isn't a necessary hypothesis because he's deistic and not interacting, that's as valuable as a no God, equal sum. So the personal experiences still clung with me, but once you start recognizing that religious people across the world have those same religious experiences, those with or without God or with multiple gods, then you realize that meditation and the non-spiritual sides of non-supernatural sides of meditation aren't necessary for achieving sort of this non-supernatural spirituality, or just evocative feeling can be achieved. And any psychology class on altered states or neurobiology book will easily explain how that's achieved. You can use different chemicals, you can use different lab experiences to give out-of-body experiences, to give sense of communion with heaven, communion with God. All these can be achieved in a lab with very naturalistic methods. So that dissipated that. It's like, okay. So that still leaves
about what
religion
age?
without belief. And I think community, the community of religion can have value as we've seen, some of the isolationist nature of it can lead to very negative results. But I think the infrastructure of religion could be used as a positive tool, even though right now it's a mixed bag.
So it sounds like you did get something out of religion positively for quite some time.
Yes, I did. Friendships, a sense of belonging, there's lots of emotional appeal. There's even mental appeal, because you do talk about history, and you do play these mind games and challenges. It's just, like I said, it's illusory. So you're all taught. It's like having a book club, and you can get into really intriguing conversations about the book. It doesn't make the book any more real, even though the conversations can be intellectually stimulating. But mainly social benefits were by far. I needed a job. I got a job within 1 minute of going back to my high school church. Like, boom. So that I wasn't so mercenary that I thought, oh, therefore I'll keep going. But it's still subconsciously like, whoa, this person wants me so much that he's approaching me with this job. And of course you start thinking coincidence and confirmation bias and such. And you have this regular excuse to meet with people, which can be hard, like hard to organize and host groups of so many friends. But it's a natural venue for that. So yeah, keeping up with each other, even if they don't show up for a while, they'll come back. And it serves, social media, I think, is replacing a lot of that. And I think that's one of the big knocks of why religion is hemorrhaging right now with people, is
The open discussion
the
about it.
whole connectivity can be achieved without the venue of a church. So, yeah.
The second question usually has the longest answer. The third question is more of a playful thing, and it's kind of split into two different directions. The original question is, if you were a superhero, what would your power be and what would your name be? And what I was looking for is what in your life might make you a superhero. Other people have taken it, well, if I was in a comic book or a movie, this is the power I would like. So
Which way did you want to go with that?
I'd like to hear both, actually.
Um,
What in your life might make you a hero?
I think even going back to college, that I've had a knack for connecting people to each other. You could call it matchmaking, but it may be friend making as well. Just knowing which personalities will click with each other, and trying to get them into the same room, and then their friendship takes off beyond anything I necessarily had in terms of friendship with them. It'll escalate. Now, I've often been praised for my intellect or my listening ability, but I don't know how applicable that is in a superhero sense.
You had implied that you had met some challenges, whether medical or personal or something. Personally, I'm a brain tumor survivor, and frankly, I think that's enough to make me a hero. I haven't killed myself.
Yeah, nothing as severe as of what you've gone through. Right now, I have an undiagnosed condition that affects my neurology and metabolism severely. And if I end up punching through it and regaining my athleticism and even intellect has been hindered a lot by this. That's why I never used to slur or sound like a pothead, but every once in a while now I do. And so I haven't come out of it yet. So I don't know that I'm a hero. And every time I push against it and fight against it and try to reclaim or develop my physical or intellectual abilities, the condition hits back and hard. So if I tax myself physically, I will stay taxed for days.
Well,
And so I can't say that I'm very heroic there when I have the constitution of a canary. So,
allow me to suggest that you are heroic for being persistent, and not giving up. I know too many people with too many problems, and we tend to look up to each other and call each other heroes. I don't want to get too much into that. We can talk about that later if you like. If you were a comic book hero or a movie hero or cartoon, whatever,
I'll play the trick card and just say magic.
just be a magician.
Because once you get magic, that opens up pretty much a whole panoply of abilities. So, like Doctor Strange, he just pulls out a different object, and he needs to travel in time. He needs to teleport. He needs to blast a bad guy or put up a defense. He needs to heal somebody. It's maybe that's cheating a little, but even in grade school, that would be my answer. I remember saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to have magic?" And then I'd extrapolate all these magical options, and once you add magic to your ability set, or even to the world, that's
a non-standard question. What would you do with magic?
That becomes sort of an issue of authority and agency, and I wouldn't want to interfere with that.
What do you do when you become all-powerful?
The Superman dilemma, right? And Superman horribly told Wonder Woman sometimes you have to let him die or something, and just so that they could remember to make their own way. Probably the most horrible thing that he's ever said. It'd be hard to find where he said it because it goes against my vision of him. But helping curb violence and heal wounds would be the first priority, helping human prosperity. But it would take a lot of reflection and, use magic for wisdom, right? So that you could get an understanding of what best serves humanity, not just my view of humanity, so that people can thrive. I mean, that would be my goal, is helping people.
So it sounds like you try to be as responsible as possible.
Well, of course.
Excellent.
That would be the most fulfilling, and that, you could say that's altruistic, but the positive feedback from that kind of activity would also, be self-serving in some ways. That'd be awesome to be able to be that part. Even if it was anonymously, it would still, watching the fruits of the endeavors, or I should say seeds, develop into fruits, because I think that a main part of it would be, spreading freedom and education, but not through force, but through knowledge and
I'm glad you mentioned freedom. That's my most important. Do you have anything else to add to the magic or superpowers?
Nope.
Then my final question that I ask everyone is, would you like to ask me any questions? And that's completely open-ended as well.
I can't think of anything. Well, I guess what prompts you to want to make a library of these interviews?
I've been asked that before, and you're welcome to ask a different question
I
if you
assume
like.
you've been asked that before, actually.
Um,
But I actually wonder.
I've answered it different ways. Some are completely different, but they're all true. And they range from, I'm a bored guy with a camera. I'm curious, I want to connect with people. That's another most important thing for some people, is making connections.
Yeah.
But the more I tack on to that, I think I want to take over the world. And it's kind of humorous. I'm glad you smiled a little bit, smirked.
I hope it's facetious.
But if I were to take over the world, I would need to know what everybody wants me to do with that power. Because I'm not going to be a tyrant. I want to rule the world with everyone else. So if you agree with my rules, then you rule the world with me.
So
Does that
you
make
want to
sense?
be a major voice in the world in a chorus.
That's probably a good way of looking at it. So, yeah, I would like to take over the world. I've got
How does this
philosophical
help
rules.
you take over the world?
It's a stepping stone. It builds confidence, it builds information, data, what do people want? What do they think is important? What would you do if you had magic powers? What would you do if you ruled the world? Those kinds of things.
So you're gaining knowledge of the human condition so that you can better
Yeah, I wouldn't
administer
word it that
the
way, but
humanity.
that fits. That fits.
Okay. Cool.
Any other questions you would like to ask me?
Nope.
Not the meaning in the universe or anything, what the purpose of
42.
life? 'Cause I think the purpose of life is to decide what your purpose in life is.
Oh, yeah, I believe we make our own purposes. I don't believe in normative concepts that exist outside of humanity's mind. I think it's all up for us to create and discover amongst ourselves. Yeah.
So then do you prefer subjectivity over objectivity?
I think that's more of a spectrum than a dichotomy. And it would vary by topic.
You mean you could have mixes of both? Is that what you meant?
No, I'm saying one person's might call something objective, and some person identifying the same phenomena might call it subjective, even though they agree. Like, for example, morality being rooted in the nature of man. Some would say, well, that's subjective because it's part of man, and some would say objective because it's outside of individual choices, or some might even argue out of consciousness. And then some might say, oh, it's culturally grounded. That still has a degree of subjectivity, and it's only purely subjective when you get down to the anarchy individual level. And on the flip side, you head out into the supernatural, and there's still powers that be that take away from ultimate objectivity. And since I don't believe in ultimate objectivity and ultimate subjectivity, at least when it comes to morals, I would not be happy with. I don't believe in one, I wouldn't be happy with the other. And but I believe there is an objective reality, but I think we all have subjective observations of it as we try to approach maximal understanding, as it were, if not ultimate, which is different.
Well, very cool. If there's anything you'd like to add or say to the internet, the world at large, now's your chance.
Thank you, Sean Carroll, for the term poetic naturalist, which I got off your website, even if you didn't invent it. It's a great word.
What is poetic naturalist mean?
It's as you know, the normal meaning of naturalist.
No, I don't.
One who believes in the natural world is all that there is.
Okay.
That there isn't a supernatural. And a lot of people who attack naturalism as being reductionist, and oh, you're just chemicals, oh, you're just, meat sack. It's like, no. I think the poetic part captures that, yeah, you can experience awe and majesty and love and beauty. The poetic part reframes the naturalist part. Yeah, I am a naturalist, but I still believe in that whole bunch of wondrous things. And I believe they're natural. And, yeah.
That sounds very open-minded. I can appreciate that. Anything else?
No.
Okay, now I can shut it off. Thank you.